At 5:14 local time, the operations room aboard the U.S. Navy destroyer shifts from routine watch to razor-sharp focus in under 3 seconds. 3 surface contacts, fast, closing in, bearing 087. On the radar screen, they first appear as crisp returns slicing across the northern edge of the shipping lane in the Strait of Hormuz. No AIS signal, no bridge-to-bridge call, no hesitation, just 3 fast-moving hulls pushing out of the gray-blue dawn, their wakes already spreading wide behind them. Inside CIC, nobody raises their voice. They do not have to. The numbers speak for themselves. Contact 1, 34 knots. Contact 2, 31. Contact 3, now pushing 36. That is enough to change the mood instantly. Small high-speed craft can play dangerous games at those speeds. They can pressure, feint, cross ahead, force course changes, and in narrow waters like Hormuz, even a close pass can turn into a major international incident. The destroyer knows exactly where it is. It knows exactly which lane it is holding, and it knows exactly how little room there is for mistakes. Up on the bridge, the officer of the deck steps closer to the forward windows as the first light begins to sharpen the horizon. The ship is moving as part of a larger U.S. Navy transit through the strait, screening the formation ahead and keeping the passage steady. Until this moment, the sea had been calm. Merchant traffic was steady. Systems were normal. The situation was controlled. Then the contacts change vector. They are not shadowing from a distance. They are not moving parallel. They are converging. One from port, one from starboard, one from dead ahead, slightly offset. That is not casual movement. Closest point of approach drops below 4 nautical miles and keeps shrinking. The captain enters the bridge without drama. He glances once at the repeater display and asks the only question that matters. Any comms? Negative, Captain. No response to initial hail. He gives a single nod. Hail again. The radio operator transmits on bridge-to-bridge frequencies, voice flat and controlled. Unknown fast craft, unknown fast craft. This is a U.S. Navy vessel conducting lawful transit. You are closing at unsafe speed. Alter course immediately. Nothing. No static, no acknowledgement, no correction. Only the wakes growing longer. Down in CIC, consoles glow across focused faces. Surface operators mark every bearing change. Electronic systems begin collecting signals. Infrared cameras swing toward the contact sector and lock in. The boats are still too far away for a clean visual ID, but their engine heat signatures are bright and steady. These craft are not drifting into the lane by accident. They are driving hard. The first visual confirmation comes from the starboard lookout. Multiple small craft, low silhouette, fast profile, approximately 10 miles. The captain studies the geometry. 3 boats, 3 angles, a narrowing lane ahead. Civilian traffic to the south. The Iranian coastline somewhere beyond the morning haze to the north. He has seen this pattern before. This is not open confrontation. Not yet. First comes pressure. Force the American ship to turn, force the transit to slow. Create tension, create footage, create a headline. The destroyer gives them none of it. Maintain course and speed. That order matters. In these waters, unnecessary movement can be misunderstood. A sudden turn can look like uncertainty. A delay can look like hesitation. So the ship holds steady. At 5:16, the lead contact surges again. 38 knots now. Fast enough that its bow begins to rise and slam with the rhythm of the chop. Another craft cuts slightly inward from starboard, shaping a line that could tighten the destroyer's maneuvering room in less than 5 minutes. Closest point of approach, 2.8 nautical miles. On the bridge wing, long-range optics finally pull detail out of the morning light. Narrow hulls, military paint, fast patrol profile. There is no question now. Iranian fast craft. The report moves through the ship in clipped professional language. Bridge CIC, contacts assessed Iranian. 3 fast craft, coordinated approach. The captain does not react outwardly. Log it. Below decks, the ship begins its quiet transition from presence to posture. Not escalation. Not yet. But readiness. The forward mount shifts a few degrees off centerline. Not enough to provoke, just enough to be seen. Close-in defense teams report ready. Countermeasure systems are checked. The electronic monitoring suite continues recording every sweep, every signal, every flicker coming from the Iranian boats. This is no longer just navigation. It is documentation. Outside, the sea feels smaller by the second. At 5:17, the portside contact makes the first truly high-risk move. It angles across the destroyer's projected track. Not close enough to collide, but close enough to force calculation. The starboard contact mirrors the pressure, staying wide and keeping the American ship centered between them. The third boat remains ahead, pacing and waiting. They are building a box. The radio operator hails again, this time sharper. Iranian military craft approaching U.S. Navy vessel. You are operating unsafely. Alter course now. Your actions are being recorded. Still nothing. No response, no course change, just intent. From the flight deck, the report comes up to the bridge. Helicopter detachment standing by. That is the next step on the ladder. Eyes overhead, pressure from above. Document it from every angle. Spin them up, the captain says. A moment later, the deep pulse of rotor blades rolls across the stern as the ship's helicopter begins to wake. Deck crews move quickly and low, every motion controlled, every step practiced. Behind them, the destroyer continues forward through the Strait of Hormuz. Gray hull, steady track, clean wake, no turn, no hesitation. Inside CIC, one operator leans closer to his display. New contacts. The room tightens instantly. Bearing 012. 2 additional surface returns. Range, 18 nautical miles. High speed, heading south. For 1 second, nobody speaks. Then the tactical picture updates all at once. This was never only 3 boats. That was just the opening move. Now, with the helicopter spinning up on deck and 5 Iranian craft beginning to shape the water ahead, the destroyer is no longer dealing with simple harassment. It is looking at a coordinated squeeze. At 5:19 local time, the situation becomes clear. 5 Iranian surface contacts now bracket the northern edge of the shipping lane. 3 are already close enough to influence the destroyer's decisions. 2 more are driving south at speed, still beyond visual range, but no longer just symbols on a screen. On the CIC display, the pattern is impossible to miss. This is not random shadowing. It is coordinated pressure. On the flight deck, the helicopter lifts. Rotor wash sweeps across the steel as the MH-60R Seahawk rises from the stern, nose dipping for a moment before it steadies and pushes north toward the contacts. Its mission is simple in theory and demanding in practice. Identify their posture, widen the ship's awareness, and make one thing clear. The destroyer is not blind. Below, the American ship holds its course. That alone takes discipline. The Strait of Hormuz leaves little room for careless movement. Tankers are already moving through the southern lanes. Commercial traffic creates fixed patterns. The Iranian boats understand the geography, and they are using it carefully. Not to cross the final line, but to narrow the destroyer's options. CPA update. Lead contact now 2.1 nautical miles. Starboard flanker holding at 2.5. Forward contact slowing slightly, possibly waiting on the others. The captain listens without speaking. He has seen enough close water pressure to know the difference between noise and choreography. This is choreography. The first helicopter image arrives seconds later. Grainy at first, then sharper. Narrow fast craft, low profiles, military hulls, wake patterns overlapping in a rough arc. One boat is clearly leading, pushing hard and drawing attention. Another stays offset to starboard, never fully committing. The third remains ahead, acting like a gate. The 2 newer contacts are farther back, but they are moving on the right line to turn 3-point pressure into a full net. They're hurting, the helicopter sensor operator says over the net. That word changes the mood. From above, the pattern is cleaner than it could ever be from sea level. The Iranian craft are not rushing in without control. They are using spacing. One pressures from the bow, one threatens a starboard cut, one holds port side just far enough out to force caution. The trailing pair are closing like a second layer, ready to take advantage of any American turn. The destroyer answers in the only way it can. Continue warnings, record all signals, maintain speed. The bridge-to-bridge radio crackles again. Iranian military craft, this is a U.S. Navy vessel in lawful transit. Your maneuvers are unsafe. Alter course immediately. Silence. No acknowledgement, no course correction, no attempt to make it look like a misunderstanding. At 5:21, the lead Iranian boat makes the first serious pressure move. It surges across the destroyer's projected track, not close enough to trigger collision alarms, but close enough to make every officer on the bridge recheck timing, speed, and available room. The starboard flanker accelerates with it. Now the destroyer is being framed from both sides. The Seahawk drops lower, descending from 200 feet above the water. It moves in fast but controlled, angling just wide of the lead boat. The crew can now see people on deck. Helmets, dark uniforms, movement around mounted equipment. Nothing is visibly pointed yet, but that is not the point. Presence is the message. The helicopter broadcasts on open frequencies. Iranian military vessel, this is a U.S. Navy helicopter. You are operating unsafely near a U.S. Navy vessel. Change course now. The warning is repeated. Still nothing. But one detail changes. The lead Iranian boat shifts its bow half a degree outward, just enough to look less reckless on camera, then slides back in again. Not retreat, performance. Inside CIC, the electronic warfare supervisor calls it out. Surface search radar sweep from Contact 2. Low power, intermittent. They're painting us? Tracking behavior, yes, not targeting grade. That line matters. Search radar means measurement, position, heading, speed, intent. It is not the final step, but it is another move away from innocence. At 5:22, the 4th and 5th contacts begin turning in from the north. The tactical display tightens even further. From above, the Seahawk can finally see the full pattern. 5 craft, staggered across the water, never crowding together, always leaving room to shift, turn, and pressure from different angles. It is controlled, it is deliberate, and that is what makes it dangerous. The destroyer's answer remains cold and disciplined. The forward mount stays angled slightly off centerline, visible but restrained. Close-in systems remain ready but silent. Decoys are prepared, countermeasure teams stand by. Farther back in the transit, a second U.S. warship begins to adjust its position, subtly adding depth to the American side of the board. The Iranian boats may be trying to box in one ship, but that ship is not alone, and the helicopter crew sees something even more serious than the boats. North of the formation, closer to the Iranian shoreline, dust trails begin moving across a pale strip of land beyond the water. Long vehicles, spaced apart, stopping and starting in intervals. The sensor operator zooms in. Rectangular shapes, raised frames, vehicles turning toward the strait. Bridge, helo, possible mobile coastal launch systems on the shoreline. Repeat, possible mobile launch systems moving into position. For the first time that morning, the situation changes category. This is no longer only a close water pressure event. Fast craft ahead, shore-based systems in the background, a narrowing lane in the middle. The destroyer keeps moving, but everyone inside CIC understands the same thing at once. The box around the ship is not the whole problem. It may be covering something larger. At 5:24 local time, the Strait of Hormuz stops looking like a simple harassment zone and begins to look like a coordinated targeting picture. Inside CIC, the destroyer's threat board updates in real time. 5 Iranian high-speed craft remain spread across the northern side of the lane, still compressing the ship's maneuvering space. But now the helicopter feed has added a much heavier layer to the equation. Multiple mobile systems are moving along the Iranian shoreline. They stop in staggered intervals, turn toward the water, and hold position. That changes everything. Surface pressure can be handled. Shore-based systems turn pressure into a countdown. The report comes in again, this time firmer. Possible launch vehicles confirmed. The captain looks once at the tactical display, then out through the bridge windows where the water ahead still looks calm enough to seem harmless. Pass it to the group. The message moves up the chain immediately. The destroyer is no longer only screening a transit. It is now the forward edge of a developing multi-domain problem. Somewhere behind and to the south, the rest of the American formation begins responding quietly and professionally, without dramatic calls over open frequencies. Another U.S. destroyer adjusts station. Airborne surveillance tightens. Additional sensors focus toward the shoreline. The visible shape of the pressure remains on the water. The invisible shape of it is now spreading inland. At 5:25, the lead Iranian boat makes its boldest move yet. It cuts hard across the destroyer's projected path at an inward angle, close enough to force another calculation on the bridge. Not close enough to create immediate contact, not reckless enough to cross the final line. Just close enough to keep testing the American ship's nerve. CPA, 1.4 nautical miles. No one on the bridge flinches. The destroyer does not give up the lane. Maintain course, maintain speed. That order carries even more weight now. Every second the ship holds steady, it denies the Iranian boats the image they want. An American warship pushed off track in one of the most watched choke points on Earth. Overhead, the Seahawk widens its orbit. From above, the crew can see the entire board more clearly. One Iranian craft has pushed too far forward and is now exposing its flank to the destroyer's sensors. Another remains on the starboard side, trying to preserve the box. The 2 trailing contacts are still closing, but their timing has begun to slip. Not by much. Just enough to suggest the formation is starting to strain. Below, the American ship's electronic warfare team catches every detail, every radar sweep, every burst of communication, every tiny change in spacing. Everything is captured, tagged, and recorded. Then the first warning tone sounds. Sharp, brief, distinct. Heads turn in CIC. Radar activity from shore. Another tone follows, longer this time. Not a launch alert. Not yet. But no longer background noise either. The signals are stronger now, more focused. Something on land is beginning to illuminate sectors of the water with more than casual surveillance. Assessing targeting support behavior, the electronic warfare officer says. It is the most careful way to describe a situation that is becoming less careful by the second. The captain hears the tone through the bridge speaker and asks the question no one needs dressed up. Are they locking us? Negative confirmed lock, but they're getting closer. Closer. That single word tightens the air. The helicopter is ordered wider still. If shore-based systems are waking up, a low-flying aircraft circling nearby could become the easier pressure point before anyone tries to challenge a destroyer built to take the first shock and answer with control. The Seahawk banks away and climbs, staying in the fight for awareness, but refusing to become the easiest target on the board. At 5:26, the Iranian boats feel the pressure shift and push harder. The forward craft angles in again, this time on a sharper line. Its bow rises with speed, its wake cutting white across the darker water. On the destroyer's starboard side, the flanking boat accelerates to match, trying to trap the American ship between movement, optics, and pressure. The message is clear: react the wrong way, and the image belongs to Tehran. But the destroyer does not give them that moment. The forward mount stays slightly off centerline, still restrained, still visible, still impossible to ignore. Close-in defensive systems remain ready, decoys are live, bridge optics are locked. Inside CIC, the team is now tracking two danger pictures at once. The surface formation closing ahead, and the activity coming alive along the shoreline. Then another American piece enters the board. A U.S. tactical aircraft, redirected from farther back in the formation, checks in overhead. Not low enough to provoke. Not close enough for drama. Just present. Fast, armed, watching. The Iranian boats cannot ignore it. The lead craft shifts half a degree off its line before correcting. Tiny movement. Major meaning. For the first time since 5:14, the pressure is no longer moving in only one direction. At 5:27, the shoreline emissions spike again. Brief, sharp, then gone. A pulse, not an action. But it is enough to tell every trained ear in CIC that the space between intimidation and something far more serious is becoming dangerously thin. The destroyer is now sitting in the kind of moment modern naval operations fear most. Too much intent. Too little clarity. Too many systems active, too little time, fast boats ahead, possible coastal launch systems ashore, civilian traffic to the south, American forces moving in from behind. One wrong interpretation from any side could turn maneuver into crisis. Then the lead Iranian boat turns inward once more, sharper than before. Its bow points across the destroyer's forward quarter on a line that no longer feels like theater. It feels like commitment. The captain watches it for 1 second longer than anyone else would find comfortable, then he speaks. Not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly enough for the bridge and CIC to hear the same order at the same time. Execute disruption. No explanation follows. None is needed. Because somewhere between the 5 boats, the active shoreline systems, and the tightening water ahead, the U.S. Navy has decided that the next move will not belong to Iran. At 5:27 local time, the balance shifts. Not with a shot, not with a launch, with control. The order moves through the destroyer in clipped practice language. Execute disruption. No emotion, no wasted motion. Inside CIC, that command means one thing: stop reacting to the shape of the trap and start breaking it apart. The first move is invisible. The electronic warfare team sends out a tightly managed response across the spectrum. Not broad enough to look reckless, not careless enough to affect civilian traffic, just precise enough to reach the place where coordinated pressure depends most: communication, timing, confidence. On the helicopter feed, the change is immediate. The lead Iranian boat, the same one that had been driving the pressure from ahead, jitters half a degree offline. Its wake loses its clean shape. A moment later, the starboard flanker drifts wider than it should. Not much, but enough for trained eyes to see it. The formation is no longer moving like one body. Inside CIC, emissions bloom, overlap, and scatter. They're stepping on each other now. That is the first crack. The destroyer uses it instantly. Come right 2 degrees. It is a tiny helm correction, almost invisible from outside, but it is timed perfectly against the widening gap between the lead boat and the starboard flanker. And that small correction changes the geometry of the entire encounter. The Iranian craft had been building a box. Now the front edge of that box is no longer aligned, and the American ship is sliding its bow toward the seam. From above, the Seahawk crew sees it better than anyone. The 5-boat pattern is starting to lose its shape. The trailing pair from the north are still closing, but they are moving toward a picture that has already changed. Their timing is late, their spacing is off. The lead craft is no longer centered. The starboard boat is too wide. The port-side pressure boat now has to make a choice: tighten aggressively or risk being left isolated on its side of the lane. That hesitation costs them. The destroyer adds speed, not a dramatic surge, not a show of force, just enough power to make every Iranian craft recalculate closure rates in real time. The U.S. ship is no longer the fixed object at the center of the board. It is reshaping the board while they are still trying to read it. The helicopter drops for one lower pass, offset wide, keeping every boat under full motion video. The warning comes again over open frequencies, firmer this time. Iranian military vessels, you are interfering with the lawful transit of a U.S. Navy ship. Your actions are unsafe. Break off immediately. This time, something answers. Not a formal reply, not a clean naval transmission, just broken fragments, overlapping voices, clipped commands stepping over one another on the net. The kind of confused traffic a disciplined formation does not create unless the plan is starting to come apart. At 5:28, the lead Iranian craft tries to regain control of the moment. It surges inward again, bow slamming through the chop, trying to cut across the destroyer's forward quarter before the opening grows wider. But the destroyer is already past the decision point. The slight course change, the added speed, and the electronic pressure have pushed the lead boat into a bad position. Too far in to keep the formation clean, too committed to back away smoothly, too exposed to keep setting the pace. Lead contact isolated. The call from CIC is calm, almost routine. Overhead, the U.S. tactical aircraft checks in closer, still not diving, still not provoking, but now close enough to become part of the Iranian crew's horizon. The visual effect matters. From the Iranian side, the picture has changed completely. What first looked like a destroyer trapped in a narrow lane now looks like something else. A warship holding its line, a helicopter watching from above, fixed-wing support arriving, another U.S. surface combatant moving up from behind, and every movement being recorded from sea, air, and sensors at once. Then the shoreline goes quiet. For the first time since the coastal systems were spotted, the radar support behavior drops out. No stronger follow-up, no continued illumination. Either the destroyer's electronic response has complicated the picture ashore, or someone on land has decided the window is closing too quickly to use. Either way, the shoreline is no longer setting the rhythm. The destroyer is. At 5:29, the starboard Iranian flanker makes the mistake that ends the pressure play. Trying to preserve the box, it turns inward too late and too sharply, crossing the visual line of the lead boat and briefly crowding the very space the formation needed to keep open. From above, it is obvious. From the bridge, it is enough. They're interfering with each other. Exactly. That is what the U.S. Navy wanted. Not a dramatic exchange, not a cinematic moment, a tactical unraveling. A point where disciplined pressure makes a coordinated challenge collapse under its own complexity. The destroyer drives through the gap, wake tightening behind it, bow steady ahead. No sirens, no warning shots. Just steel, power, and timing. The lead Iranian craft gives way first. Its bow shifts offline by several degrees, then more. It is no longer trying to control the seam. It is trying to avoid being caught by the mistake. Seconds later, the starboard boat widens again, abandoning the angle it had spent the last several minutes building. The portside craft drops speed. The two northern boats, arriving late to a picture that has already changed, stop pressing inward and fall into loose support. Spacing replaces pressure. The box is gone. At 5:30, the U.S. tactical aircraft moves just far enough overhead for every crewman on every Iranian deck to see it clearly. No theatrics, no dramatic display, just presence backed by obvious reach. That is the unforgiving part. Not damage, exposure. The Iranian boats are now fully visible, fully tracked, electronically disrupted, outpositioned on the water, watched from above, and no longer able to force a single American decision. What they meant to stage as a challenge has become a live demonstration of lost initiative. One by one, the first turnaways begin. Not dramatic, not announced, but unmistakable. The lead craft peels off first, then the starboard flanker. Then, the others begin following the withdrawal line back north toward Iranian waters, under American observation the entire way. At 5:34 local time, the challenge is over. Not because the water is empty, not because the danger has disappeared, but because the initiative has. The 5 Iranian fast craft are still on the scope, still moving, still close enough to matter, but the shape is gone. The box they had spent nearly 20 minutes building in the Strait of Hormuz has collapsed into a loose, uneven withdrawal line heading back north. No clean arcs, no coordinated pressure, no further attempt to compress the destroyer's room to maneuver. Inside CIC, the difference is obvious. Lead contact opening range. Starboard contact turning away. Trailing pair no longer closing. The captain stands on the bridge, eyes forward, and gives the order that matters more than any warning call, any weapons posture, or any show of force. Resume transit profile. That is how the U.S. Navy closes the loop. Not with celebration, with continuity. The destroyer does not chase. It does not overplay the moment. It does not turn the withdrawal into a spectacle. It simply holds its lawful course through the Strait of Hormuz. Gray hull, steady track. wake flattening back into the same rhythm it carried before the first Iranian contact ever appeared. The message is unmistakable. The transit was not broken. The lane was not surrendered. The pressure did not work. Overhead, the Seahawk remains on station long enough to confirm the withdrawal is real. From altitude, the crew watches the Iranian boats spread wider and farther apart as they move back toward the northern side of the strait. The lead craft, the same one that had driven the first high-risk crossing move, is now running slower, with no clear purpose beyond leaving the scene. The starboard flanker, once trying to pin the destroyer into a narrowing seam, has opened out so far that it no longer affects the American ship's decisions at all. The trailing pair are no longer a second wave. They are only witnesses to a plan that arrived too late. The helicopter's cameras stay locked on every movement, every turn, every speed change, every failed attempt to regroup. This is not just surveillance anymore. It is a record. Inside the destroyer, the electronic warfare team keeps collecting until the last useful signals fade into the background clutter of the strait. Surface search sweeps from the Iranian boats become weaker, less frequent, less focused. The earlier coordination traffic is gone. What remains is broken, uncertain chatter. The sound of units backing away from a situation they no longer control. Then comes the final report from shore. Launcher activity no longer observed. The message moves quietly through CIC. No applause follows, no visible release of tension. Just nods, notes, timestamps, and the steady return of naval procedure, doing what it always does after the sharpest moments, turning risk into documentation. At 5:36, the U.S. tactical aircraft overhead begins to widen its pattern as well. Not because its presence no longer mattered, because it had already worked. The aircraft had not needed to make a dramatic pass. It had not needed to force the scene. Its arrival alone had completed the reversal. From the Iranian decks below, the meaning would have been impossible to miss. What began as a pressure move against one ship ended under the eyes of a full American response network. Surface, air, electronic, legal, all converging without losing discipline. That is what broke the encounter. Not noise, not anger, systems, timing, composure. On the flight deck, the Seahawk returns first. The helicopter settles onto the stern, with the controlled force that naval aviators make look routine. Deck crews move in immediately, securing the aircraft and folding motion back into order. Above them, the destroyer never stops moving. It keeps its place in the transit, screening the formation, carrying on as if the last 20 minutes were simply another line in the watch log. In one way, they are. And that is what makes the moment heavier, not lighter. Because what happened in the Strait of Hormuz that morning was not dramatic in the movie sense. No fireballs, no wreckage, no final explosive image across the sea. But by real maritime standards, it was far more serious. A live test of nerve, geometry, escalation control, and sea dominance inside one of the narrowest and most politically sensitive waterways on Earth. Iran tried to shape the water. The U.S. Navy shaped the outcome. By 5:39, the nearest Iranian boat is more than 6 nautical miles off the destroyer's quarter and still opening. The others follow in a staggered withdrawal, visible on radar, but no longer meaningful in posture. Merchant traffic continues through the southern lanes. The horizon brightens fully now, morning light washing the strait in the same calm color it had worn before the first contact accelerated. Only the logs know the difference, and the logs know everything. The ignored hails, the converging bearings, the shoreline movement, the radar behavior, the disruption order, the break in the Iranian formation, the first turnaway, the withdrawal. Every second is stored, time-stamped, and ready for the chain of command, fleet review, intelligence analysis, and anyone who needs proof of exactly how the encounter unfolded. That may be the most unforgiving part of all, because this was never only about pushing 5 boats away. It was about stripping the challenge down to its bones and showing in real time that the U.S. Navy could enter the Strait of Hormuz, absorb a coordinated pressure play, expose every layer behind it, and continue through without giving up 1 yard of control. No speeches, no bravado. Just a destroyer cutting forward through contested water while the boats that came to unsettle it fall back toward the coast. At 5:41 local time, CIC marks the Iranian contacts as withdrawing, and the threat posture begins to ease by degrees. Not back to normal. Not yet. But enough. The captain looks out over the strait one last time, then turns slightly toward the bridge team. Keep her steady. And that is exactly what they do. Because Iran thought it was cornering an American warship in Hormuz. What it actually did was hand the U.S. Navy the perfect chance to show what real sea control looks like.